Right now, in this moment, if you gave yourself complete freedom to define a success of your own, what might it be? This question has been rattling around in my head for the last 20 years, and lately it's gotten louder, and not just for me.
Can I say something about success? Devoid of ego, what is success for you? Is your definition of success, I have to earn a certain amount of money, so many followers on social media, and why do you want that?
So, in an effort to quiet that inner noise, I've decided to ask this question out loud in the form of a podcast. A success of our own is an invitation for us to take a risk and define our own version of success beyond the mainstream metrics we've been told we should want.
Success for me is choice. It's a sense of freedom. It's a sense of flow. It's a feeling. It's not a state. It's not a marker. It's not a trophy or pin or badge.
So that we can create a sustainable and joyful success that we can finally relax into. I'm your host, Natalie Ruskin. I'm a journalist with an inquiring mind, a meditation teacher seeking the divine, and a community gatherer helping others live life more inspired. On this podcast, I'll bring you honest conversations with inspiring humans who are creating their own sustainable version of success. If we go back and return to community and have agency and celebrate the way each one of us moves through the world, I think it unlocks a lot for us when we stop trying to people please. And in the final episode of this season, I'll share my own journey with you because this podcast is personal. I have radically changed my own habits, mindset, and definition of success. Before I became a coach and meditation teacher, I was a hyper-achieving news producer with an insatiable appetite for validation, an emotional overeating problem, and a paralyzing case of imposter syndrome. Here's what no longer fits with my current version of success. Success is no longer the burning eyes and zombied expression in the mirror after forcing myself to stay awake beyond my body's bedtime cues, hustling to get ahead and do whatever it takes. Like that time I got shingles, a stress-induced rash, and couldn't justify taking the time to see a doctor to get the antiviral treatment. I was in business launch mode at the time, and I truly believed that every minute I had should be dedicated to my business. So I pushed through the pain and put my health at risk.
I think there's no better evidence or manifestation of how much stress my life is under than how successful my career is, because I'll put everything I have into work to avoid large feelings of discomfort, to avoid feelings of inadequacy, to avoid all those, archetypes.
Success is also not the shallow breathing and tightness around my chest as I strain for external evidence that I'm superior to others while dreading deep down that I'm a fraud.
I'm, collecting awards and people are talking about me and people know my voice and know my name. That could be success. But if inside I'm like, what are you doing? If in my darkest hours when nobody sees me, am I really at peace with it all?
I spent the first 5 years of my career wearing that validation-seeking vice grip to work every day. When I think back, I cringe at how I was even able to sustain that level of intensity for so long. I think a lot of us ignore the collateral damage caused by this kind of hustle because we're unconsciously conditioned to believe that we should prioritize the striving for a certain salary or status above everything else. Why is it any surprise then to see the wreckage all around us, the quiet quitting, decreased mental well-being, burnout?
My definitions of success pre-children is very different from now. My success as an individual musician or performer or writer is all wrapped up in my kids now. It checks my ambitions a lot.
So what's the version of success that you're ready to shed? This podcast offers us a space, an expansive, curious, and vulnerable space to ask this question: how do we make a beginning at creating a success of our own? We begin by asking and trusting. We ask those mossy, murky questions floating around inside our belly and brain. And we trust that simply by getting quiet and listening, we are automatically allowing for a good enough success to surface and replace the rusty old wheel. Like Virginia Woolf, one of my favorite feminist writers, penned in her book, A Room of One's Own, if we have the habit of freedom and the courage to write exactly what we think, if we escape a little from the common sitting room and see human beings not always in their relation to each other, but in relation to reality, then the opportunity will come. A success of our own is our opportunity to create hope, clarity, and a practical relief to that deep ache, which tells us we need a certain job title, high revenue, or a wall of framed degrees to feel good enough. This podcast offers you the opportunity to learn and grow through inspiring personal stories of transformation, ideas, and practices. As you listen to this podcast, breathe it in and let it slow you down even a bit, like sitting by a river as its unhurried current brings you down a few decibels. Trust that simply by listening in this less effortful way, you'll experience a shift. You'll find that puzzle piece you've been seeking. My promise to you with this podcast is to create a living, breathing conversation that's both provocative and non-performative. I'll speak with guests who have stories ranging from the radical, like Amanda Monday, who left the heteronormative standards of success altogether.
I didn't know how to navigate coming out as queer when I had been in a marriage for so long.
To the more subtle, like Todd Spencer, who created his own compass for personal success within corporate, despite having every reason to quit corporate for good.
I want to be someone who, when you scratch the surface just a little bit, there's a whole lot more there. And how I define that is by the effect I can have on other people. And I try to do that through legitimately relentless kindness.
I'm going to ask and say the things I'm afraid to say, that we're afraid to say, because honestly, the desire for relief is greater than the fear of being judged.
That's very vulnerable and raw, and I love it.
I need to share that because otherwise, what the am I doing here with this podcast? Like, I don't want to be wearing a mask. As I say that, I'm like, oh, that's 10 potential clients leaving the room.
But then there's 10 more that have their eyes and hearts open to it, right?
You know that feeling you have after a long catch-up walk with a dear friend who's just shared something really inspiring with you? You walk into your home and close the door and you just feel different, rearranged in a certain way. You're excited about your own life simply from witnessing what's possible for another. That's the vibe we're going for here. So let's make a beginning at defining and living a success of our own.